No wonder, amongst all the traditions that some of you have in your families for Christmas Day, maybe you have a traditional film that you watch, or a kind of film that you might watch on Christmas Day. I'm rooting for watching Red 1 at some point today. So perhaps you might watch an action film, or a romance, or a musical. The Christmas story, the Bible story as a whole, is a true story, and it's all of those things. And all of those stories, as good as they may be, are just copies. They're all rooted in the story that we're thinking about today. And that's particularly seen in that last reading that we had about why Christmas. Now, the video, I used to cue it up a little bit, and the reading, you might think was a bit odd and at first not very Christmassy. It is entirely Christmassy. The video and the poem were sort of based on, or sort of the video with the poem in it was based on the tiger who comes to tea, but obviously a bit of a twist. And the book of Revelation I just read from is what the word means, or apocalypse. What it means is a peeling back. So the idea is history is happening, and you peel back and see what happens behind it. And some Christians think Revelation is all about what has happened. Some is what is going to happen or is in the process of happening. It's both, or all of them. The reading that I read a moment ago is a mini Bible overview, but it focuses on Christmas. And the whole Bible you can summarize in one sentence. It's 6 words: kill the dragon and save the girl. So the Bible's quite long. Summarize it in that: kill the dragon, save the girl. You're the girl. The church is the girl. So why Christmas? Virgin birth, the shepherds, the angels, the manger. What's that got to do with me? What's it got to do with you? It's all kind of nice, it's sort of magical, but it's in the past. How's it still significant? Well, Revelation 12, with the dragons and the fighting angels, shows how the manger connects with us. Christmas is an action, a romance, and a musical. Kill the dragon, save the girl. Jesus is a hero who saves against all odds, and he's the perfect man that you need. It's an action film because he kills the dragon, the source of all suffering, sin, and death. And it's a romance because he saves and protects the one he loves. And it's a musical because it ends with a song. So where do you fit in? And the answer is, well, it's up to you. But Christmas presents you with a choice. Now, the reading has 2 signs and a war. So the first sign is that of a woman. Who is she? She's pregnant. She's very special. She's dressed in the sun. She stands on the moon, and she's crowned with 12 stars. Now, in the Old Testament, they're all imagery or images for Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, the people of God. And in Revelation, what John does a few times is he takes the Old Testament and the New Testament people of God, and he joins them together. So this woman is God's bride, the people, the church. She's Israel. And she's pregnant with a special child. Now, I noticed that here at Grove Road, we had a carol service recently. We've had one recently. And they start with the reading. Often they start with the reading that I began a moment ago with Genesis 3. And then there's a string of Old Testament predictions about Jesus' birth and long awaited. So the first one is this promise to the first woman that she will have, or a woman will have, a special boy, a child who crush the serpent's head. And there's various mini versions of this all through the Old Testament. So King David kills a giant who is dressed in serpent-like armour, and he kills him by a head wound. There's various Old Testament stories of women who killed a baddie with a head wound. And then we've, at our church over the last month, during our Advent, we've done a series of miracle births. There's a series of miracle births of barren women in the Old Testament who give birth to a hero who saves. And of course, Christmas is the big one, with a faith-filled virgin who gives birth to a son, as Mary gives birth to Jesus, fulfilling the first promise to the first woman, Eve. Now, some people think that who's being talked about here is Mary. I don't think so, because of the clothing imagery of the church, but and what happens next, but the promise that Christ will be risen up from God's people and have a special birth. So Mary is the new Eve. She is representative Israel. So that's the first sign, is the woman. But the second sign is this red dragon, and it's quite frightening. Well, the imagery is very frightening. Red is a symbol with violence, and it's a cosmic scale. Stars fall. He has 10 heads, horns, crowns, and he's a violent character. And we could unpack all the imagery, but actually verse 9 tells us the answer. He is the serpent from the start of the Bible, and he's also called the devil and Satan. And he stands ready to devour the woman's child. So at the first Christmas, and you read about this in Matthew 2, Jesus, but Herod doesn't want a competing king, and he orders all the children under 2 in that area to be killed. Something happens similar with Moses, with Pharaoh. Now, why did Herod and Pharaoh do that? We'll think about that in a second, but the promise to the first woman is that the child will crush the devil's head. Also, that the devil would strike him. And this is what happens at the cross, is Satan does strike Jesus, but that striking of Jesus is the same event that defeats Satan himself. Difference is, of course, Jesus gets back up again. But what happens here? It says the child is caught up to God, and the woman flees into the desert and is protected by God. And that's sort of shorthand for the next bit that happens, which is the war. A war between a dragon and a baby. And that does not sound like a fair fight, but the baby wins. Now, why does he want to kill this baby? Why did Herod want to kill the babies? Why did Pharaoh want to kill the babies? Because the baby is a war. The birth of the baby signals the end of the dragon. And that's where it connects with you and with me. That there's a war all around us. So often we hear, as James helped us earlier, we hear the angels saying good news and peace to earth. And yes, it is a host of angels. Now, the word host we often think of as a lot. It's also the word that's used to translate army. It's an army of angels. Now, it's funny when James was looking for an angel, and I think it was Hugo, volunteering his daughter, Iris. Now, I imagine, almost certainly, Iris, when she was 5, was an angel. You're an angel? Yeah. So you picked the blondest girl to be the angel. That's what they did at anyone I've seen. That's not. Actually, Hugo is a better choice, because he's sort of big. If you sort of like beefed him up a bit, get him on some steroids, then Hugo would actually be a pretty good angel, I imagine. They're frightening. They're big. They're blokes usually in the Bible, and they have swords. Friends of ours, their little boy, because they're being politically correct at school, their little boy was asked to be an angel, and he wouldn't be an angel until he was given a sword, because that's what they have in the Bible, he said. You hate, sort of like hate having kids like that. But that's what they were like. They're not Iris at 5, cute. They're Hugo at less cute. And there's an army of them. That's why it says, it doesn't say the shepherds went, oh, how cute. Angels. They were terrified. That's what angels are like. So they say peace on earth. But why do the angels say peace on earth? It's because the heavenly army has won the war. So verses 7 to 9, we hear about this war. It's a cosmic battle. Now the films at Christmas, sort of films I like at Christmas, things like Narnia, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. It's all this very clear. You know who the goodies are. You know who the baddies are. And that's what we see here. Good and evil. We know who's who. But on earth, in our life day by day, it's not so clear, is it? Because the lines aren't as tidy as that. In fact, the Bible tells us the lines run right through people, right through our own hearts. But we're the baddies. We're all the baddies. We like to think those people over there are the baddies, but actually you and I are the baddies. And when we pause for a moment, we know it. If we explore our thoughts, even today, think about what might have crossed your mind already, you would not necessarily be happy to share with others. We know there's something deeply wrong, because really the dragon has got to all of us and is in all of us. Because like him, we resist the idea of Jesus on the throne, because we want to be on the throne. But of course, the dragon loses. How? How is the war won and the dragon defeated? Well, in verse 11 we're told, they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they love not their lives even unto death. They've conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of his testimony. And in John, you might think, well, where the lambs come into it, we're talking about dragons, now we're talking about lambs. That the child is the lamb. In John, he uses picture words from the Old Testament. So the Old Testament explains that our sin separates us from God and leads to death and judgment. But they had a ritual in the Old Testament where they take a lamb, you lay your hands on the lamb to symbolically transfer sin onto him, and then the lamb is killed before an altar. And the lamb gets what I deserve. And then you repeat that ritual, which is that forgiveness is costly and comes at the death of another. But actually what was happening there was pointing towards Jesus Christ, who's called the Lamb of God, who goes to the cross and dies once for all time for a vast number of people. And that's not the end. He rises again, defeating death, and ascends, and he reigns today. So that's shorthand for what John said is caught up with God to the throne. And this is where Revelation 12 links us to the historic Christmas and us. It shows us the why. Christmas is the eternal, immortal God becomes a human, even a baby. The purpose of God becoming a man reveals God in his action, his words, and he goes to the cross as the lamb, and he dies in our place. And in his resurrection, he's beating death, and he rises and ascends to the throne. And so, in verse 10 and 11 of the reading, the devil has no power, he's defeated. The devil has one job left, and that is to keep you from God, to keep you in sin, to keep you away from thinking about Jesus and God and any of those things. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're doing the worst things possible. In fact, he quite likes it if he thinks you're a really good bloke. Just keep you living in opposition to God and not thinking about it. But other than that, the devil has no power because his tools and his end game have been completely disarmed. Sin, forgiveness of sin is available. Death is defeated. And there's a promise of a new creation. Spoiler alert, if you read to the end of the book, which I thoroughly recommend, it all finishes up fine. But there's no suffering and there's no death. Now, the rest of this chapter, we're to read on, the devil lashes out at God and the child and at the woman. That is, the devil lashes out at God's people. Remember, she's an image of us, the church. And ever since the very start, the church is so often persecuted. But it says she's protected in the desert, so God protects and provides for her, keeps her in hardship and keeps her going. But she's not home, not yet. Satan is still thrashing about. He's still trying to disrupt and take who he can with him by temptation or persecution. But he himself is finished. So do you see the connections? The baby is born at Christmas is the one who crushes Satan's head, who defeats the dragon by doing away with sin and death. Kill the dragon, save the girl. Nothing can harm his bride, ultimately. Nothing can hide the church, his people. I said at the start also, it is a musical. Verse 12. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them, but woe to you on earth and sea. And Revelation, like the rest of the Bible, is full of music. It's full of singing. The central book in the Bible is the Psalms. It's a music book. We sing, we rejoice. They're our battle song. And not just at Christmas, but all our worship services, we sing. And so there's a choice. Christmas is a war, but the war is won. So which side are you on? It seems pretty obvious which side to go on, doesn't it? And yet, we struggle with this choice. People stubbornly want to hold on to the reins of their own life. They or just keep dilly-dallying and delaying and hedging our bets and putting it off. Don't. Because the war is over. And the choice is obvious. And the offer is free. But you must choose. And the choice is simple. Side with the one born at Christmas who took your sin, or declare independence, which is really siding with the dragon. And the choice is life and death. So Christmas is God's gift to humanity, and it's held before you as a choice to receive the gift or not. And you can find out more about it both here at Grove Road or at CPC, Church Presbyterian. Both churches love to talk to people about it, ask someone afterwards. But this is the true story that all other stories are copying. How will your story end? Well, I suggest you talk to God about it, ask him, say, I'm not sure about this, God, if you're there, please make yourself known. Maybe you can go further, tell him, I accept your gift. Please forgive my sins for Jesus' sake, and give me your Holy Spirit to live for you. And we're going to sing our final carol in a moment. And the last verse, the fourth verse of our final carol, ties together the two readings that we had. The first from the beginning of the Bible, the one from the end. The baby that beat the dragon to rescue, killed the dragon, saved the girl. Let's stand to sing our final carol.